While you are still standing, turn your Bible with me to Acts of the Apostle, chapter 27, beginning from verse 1 to 25. Acts of the Apostle, chapter 27. We will read from verse 1 to 25. Acts 27, 1 to 25, he reads, and I quote, "And when it was decided that we should sail to Italy, they delivered Paul and some other prisoners to one named Julius, a centurion of the Augustan regiment. So entering the ship of Adramyttium, we put to sea, meaning to sail along the coast of Asia. Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, was with us. And the next day we landed at Sidon. And Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him liberty to go to his friends and receive care. When we had put to sea from there, we sailed under the shelter of Cyprus because the winds were what? Contrary. And when we had sailed over the sea, which is of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia. There the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing to Italy, and he put us on board. When we had sailed how? Slowly, many days, and arrived with difficulty of Cnidus, the wind not permitting us to proceed. We sailed under the shelter of Crete of Salmon, and passing it how? With difficulty, we came to a place called what? Fair Havens, near the city of Lasea. Now when much time had been spent, and sailing was now what? Dangerous. But now much time had been spent, and sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was already over. Paul advised them, saying, "Men, I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster and much loss, not only of the cargo and ship, but also our lives." Nevertheless, the centurion was more persuaded by the helmsman and the owner of the ship than by the things spoken by Paul. And because the harbor was not suitable to winter in, the majority advised to set sail from there also, if by any means they could reach Phoenix, a harbor of where? Crete, opening toward the southwest and northwest, and winter there. Somebody say southwest, and northwest. Say it again, southwest, and northwest. Now that's all the permutation and political configuration that's been going on for a while. Say with me, southwest, and northwest, and winter there. When the south wind blew softly, supposing that they had obtained their desire, putting out to sea, they sailed close by where? Every time I pause to emphasize it, I want you to say it. They sailed close by Crete. But not long after, a tempestuous end wind arose called Euroclydon. So when the ship was caught and could not head into the wind, we let her dry. And running under the shelter of an island called Clauda, we secured the skiff with difficulty. When they had taken it on board, they used cables to undergird the ship, and fearing lest we should run aground on the sighty sands, they struck sail, and so were driven. And because we were exceedingly tempest-tossed, the next day lightened the ship. On the third day, we threw the ship's tackle overboard. How? With our own hands. Now when neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest beat on us, all hope that we will be saved was finally given up. But after long abstinence from food, then Paul stood in the midst of them and said, "Men, you should have listened to me and not have sailed from Crete and incurred this disaster and loss." Where did they sail from? Crete. "And now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must be brought before Caesar. And indeed, God has granted you all those who sail with you. Therefore, take heart, men, for I believe God that it will be just as it was told me.'" You may be seated. Fellow citizens of our country, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you once again to our State of the Nation broadcast. And today I'm speaking on the subject, a gathering storm and avoidable shipwreck, how to avoid catastrophic Euroclydon. The year 2015 has been described by some as happy but anxious. And so at this critical juncture in the history of our nation, I bring to you a word in season, which in time to come may turn out to have been a final warning regarding the imminent storms threatening to hit our nation. At the same time, this is a word of hope, the assurance that despite the looming chaos, Nigeria in the hands of God is going to be the biggest miracle of the century. First, I must reiterate in unequivocal terms that my position in the unfolding political situation of our nation is that of a nation builder and not a politician. And that my desire is to see a nation that works in my lifetime. On the 16th of November 2014, as I stood on this platform to share with you the Nigeria of my dreams, I laid it bare to all and sundry, while I would rather incline my ears to the melodies within my reins as to the beat of a distant drum. Although the position I stand here today to declare may appear as controversial to many, I do not go about seeking controversies. It is the Lord who has controversy with the nations, with the inhabitants of the land, and with his people, because their counsel is contrary to his. And according to Jeremiah 25, verse 31, the Bible says, "A noise will come to the ends of all the earth, for the Lord has a controversy with the nations. He will plead his case with all flesh. He will give those who are wicked to the sword, says the Lord." Let me therefore declare upfront my desire for a successful transition exercise, irrespective of political party interest. About this time 5 years ago, in the year 2010, when the nation was engulfed in a constitutional crisis that bordered on the refusal to transmit power to the current president, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, and the hijack of presidential powers by a cabal following the incapacitation of President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, as I was inspired by God to take action, I gathered the heroes of democracy with the help of civil society organization leaders at the Sheraton Lagos Hotel Ikeja, and the Save Nigeria Group was born. We marched the streets of Abuja and Lagos until the doctrine of necessity paved the way for the restoration of constitutionality. After President Goodluck Jonathan was sworn in, we at the Save Nigeria Group had a series of meetings with him in the bid to chart a new course for our nation, offering him what we termed a contract to save and transform Nigeria, which we consider an irreducible minimum standard of governance below which the Nigerian people should not be subjected. We sought to lend capacity to a man in whom both God and the people had great expectations. We thought that, having come from a part of the country that had borne the brunt of our lopsided political structure, Mr. President will understand, like the biblical Queen Esther, that for such a time as this, it was brought into the kingdom to be the facilitator of geopolitical restructuring and national integration. However, when we could not find fruit of genuine commitment to these ideals at that time, and when it appeared to us that the president had chosen a path that could lead to the antithesis of what we consider his unique role, we went across the nation, talking to leading political contenders in search of the most suitable candidate to whom we could lend our support. On the 31st of July 2010, we brought together those we called arrowheads who could constitute a team of transformational leaders for our nation, including the likes of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Dr. Obiezek Brazili, ex-governor of Cross River State Donald Duke, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, Mr. Fola Adiola, Jimmy Lawal, Honorable Wale Oshun, Yinka Domakin, among others. Meetings were held in my home where I made it clear that I would not be seeking political office so that people would not think I convinced the Nigeria Group for that purpose. It was thereafter some of us found General Buhari to be the most suitable of the leading presidential contenders. And when months later, he invited me to be his running mate on the platform of the Congress for Progressive Change, CPC, I flatly refused until after much persuasion and corroborating counsel. Details of what transpired in that period will be out in my book, Strategic Intervention in Governance, Volume 1, which will be presented to the public on the 4th of February this year by God's grace. I say all of this to make it clear that I do what I do just because I desire a Nigeria that works, not because I seek any political office. However, it is my considered opinion that capable men and women who love God and love the people of this country must offer themselves to serve when the opportunity arises. For as Plato said, the price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. That's why I'm so grateful to God and thankful to General Buhari for offering me the opportunity to break the jinx and forever eliminate from our consciousness the notion that pastors have no business with politics or that no pastor should have anything to do with politics. The fact that another pastor who has never won an election is now running mate to General Buhari in the 2015 election is a testimony to that. As we approach the general election a few weeks from today, with President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan of People's Democratic Party pitted against General Muhammadu Buhari of all Progressive Congress the second time around, there have been questions regarding my political leanings. It is clear, except to the mischief makers, where my loyalties lie, but this broadcast is not about political endorsements. It's about alerting the nation of the storms ahead. But if you must know, my political loyalty today lies with General Buhari, and I cannot claim not to know the issues surrounding the APC primary and the processes that led to the selection of his current running mate. Nevertheless, this broadcast is about the counsel of the Most High, who rules in the affairs of men and gives rulership to whoever he wills. The winds and the making and unmaking of nations. First, I would love to remind you that the Most High cannot be crowded out of history, because history is a story. Kingdoms have emerged or disappeared. Nations have risen or fallen. Great leaders have mounted and exited the stage, but none of these have occurred without the direction or permission of God Almighty. Not only has he authored history, he has also ordered the times and the seasons for unveiling the content of the pages of history, having predetermined the appointed time for each nation. God orders and unveils the story of the nations with the stirring of the winds. In the Bible, we see the destiny of nations unfold in response to this stirring of the winds upon the earth and the sea. Whenever these winds blow, changes occur in the governance of nations for good or for evil. Give me Daniel chapter 7, beginning from verse 1. Daniel chapter 7, verse 1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed, telling the main facts. Verse 2. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. I've told you before, this is the animal called man. In the book of Daniel, we see the four winds of heaven stirring up the great sea, which represent the people, multitudes, nations, and tongues. In response to the stirring, 4 beasts came out of the great sea. These 4 beasts were 4 kings, and their kingdoms known today as the Babylonian kingdom, the Medo-Persian kingdom, the Greek empire, and the Roman empire. The 4 winds of heaven are the attributes of God: mercy, truth, righteousness, and peace. Psalm 85, verse number 10 to 13. Psalm 85, 10 to 13. Mercy and truth have met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed. Truth shall spring out of the earth, and righteousness shall look down from heaven. Yes, the Lord will give what is good, and our land will yield its increase. Righteousness will go before him, and shall make his footsteps our pathway. Ironically, when these forces impact upon the earth, they expose the beasts in the rulers of nations. These beastly rulers leave behind them a trail of devastation and dryness, after which the 4 winds of the heavens are again prophetically stirred to expel these beastly forces and bring restoration to the valley of dry bones and its content. Ezekiel 37, 1 to 14. In the parallel book of Revelations, you can locate the 4 winds of the earth. These are revealed as forces affecting the nations again. These forces result in the troubling or change of governmental orders. I'm just laying this foundation so that you know who is in charge. The 4 winds of the earth are politics, economy, military, and religion. These forces could be channeled to either the making or ruining of nations, depending on the dispositions of the leaders and the people. For instance, national ruin was the result in many African states with the emergence of tyrants after independence. the likes of Idi Amin Dada of Uganda, Mobutu Sese Seko of Democratic Republic of Congo, Jim Bedel Bokassa of Central African Republic, Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo of Equatorial Guinea, General Sani Abacha of Nigeria, and many other ambitious men whose dreams, whose drives and delusions unleashed a devastating storm into the political space of their respective nations. This political storm resulted or has resulted, as the case may be, in economic ruin as these men enrich themselves at the expense of their respective nations. At some point in Uganda, for instance, currency was printed just to satisfy the whims and caprices of Idi Amin without recourse to any principle of monetary policy management. Mobutu Sese Seko, on his part, amassed so much wealth through corruption that he was reportedly richer than his country and appropriated many of his country's assets as he plunged into infrastructural collapse. Bokassa, intolerant of opposition politicians whom he allegedly killed and ate or fed to crocodiles, diverted and squandered the little wealth his country had. General Sani Abacha became the most brutal dictator in the history of Nigeria, eliminating perceived opponents by means of a deadly killer squad and stashing away over $3 billion of public money in foreign accounts. And there are people in this nation today who still pay heavy compliments to General Sani Abacha because they benefited from his wickedness. Obiang, who is still the president of Equatorial Guinea, is reportedly worth $600 million. He is said to have taken full control of his country's national treasury and deposited more than $500 million into accounts controlled by himself and his family, claiming that he did this to prevent civil servants from being tempted to engage in corrupt practices. It will be observed that the emergence of these African dictators was as a result of the invasion of the military wing, manifesting through coup d'etats or civil wars, which in some cases resulted in counter-coups or extended civil wars. In more recent times, especially since the turn of the century, the wind of religion and the wind of the military have been unleashed upon the continent of Africa and upon the nations of the earth like a genie in a bottle, manifesting in the form of terrorist organizations from Boko Haram in Nigeria to Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and Al-Shabaab in the Horn of Africa, from Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda to the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and from Hezbollah in Lebanon to Hamas in Palestine. Conversely, the four winds of the earth have also served in ushering nations into seasons of genuine or perceived transformation. For example, the formation of the United States of America was preceded by the stirring of the combined winds of religion, economy, politics, and military in Europe as well as in America. Many of the colonies which formed the United States were created by settlers who fled religious persecution in Europe. This quest for religious freedom and the discipline that characterized the Puritan migrants became the fuel for the highly profitable agricultural and commercial activities that produced economic prosperity in the colonies. The political wind blew when the colonies declared independence, and this declaration was accompanied by the War of Independence, upon which was laid the foundation of a prosperous nation that has become the most powerful country on earth today. Similarly, the formation of the Islamic kingdoms, the largest of which was the Ottoman Empire, that later transformed to modern-day Turkey under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, was inspired by this interplay of the four winds of the earth. Other cases in point include the economic miracle of the Asian tigers, including Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, and Singapore, as well as the Asian giant, China. It is gladdening to know that the four winds of the earth, no matter how ferocious, are under God's control. Revelation chapter 7, verse 1 to 3. Revelation 7, 1 to 3. After these things, I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, on the sea, or on any tree. Then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the four angels, to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. May the seal of the Almighty come upon your forehead. In the name of Jesus. Now let's look at Nigeria and the four winds of the earth. Let us now bring this back home by taking a brief look at the interplay of political, economic, military, and religious winds in the journey of the Nigerian nation so far. Our pre-independence history saw the emergence of empires, kingdoms, fiefdoms, and communal political arrangements whose rise and fall were driven by military expeditions motivated by economic interests and in some cases clad in religious motives. Since independence, these winds, operating through political power blocks, have produced governmental change from one regime to another. Between 1966 and 1999, it was often a case of one military government taking over from a civilian government or from another military government, citing, among other factors, economic mismanagement and political corruption, and expressing a messianic mission to correct the blunders, even if insincerely. In the democratic arrangements that preceded the return to civil rule in 1999, such as the 1993 elections, religion was a much more silent factor among the four winds in the determination of political outcomes. That was why the June 12, 1993 elections could produce victory for a Muslim ticket. However, following the return to civil rule, religion has become a major factor in the determination of election outcomes, especially since the 2003 elections, in which General Muhammadu Buhari first contested for the presidency, as he has often been erroneously associated with religious fundamentalism. The import of this factor got to what some might have thought would be a crescendo in the 2011 elections, when for the first time in Nigeria's history, a pastor stepped into politics as running mate of General Buhari. Nevertheless, in the year 2015, a crucial year in the unfolding history of our nation, the four winds of the earth are about to hit the nation in one combined storm that will not leave her the same. The purpose of this broadcast, therefore, is to give a timely warning before the storm arrives, like Apostle Paul did on that journey to Rome in the Alexandria ship in Acts 27 that we just read. It's also to offer an alternative pathway, even if the warnings and the proposals are rejected, as occurred in Paul's case. But first, let us examine the state of the nation and show how we have stirred the ship of state with difficulty, ignoring the warning signs, laying claim to fictitious economic achievements, celebrating political institutions with weak foundations, allowing criminality and rebellion to fester in the guise of religion, and denying the seeming comatose state of our military and its ability to withstand the pressure, thereby subjecting our nation to a depth of instability never before experienced since the Civil War. The state of the nation. Today, Nigeria is supposedly the largest economy in Africa, surpassing South Africa and Egypt with a GDP of $522 billion, a value obtained since the rebasing of the economy in April 2014. With this nominal GDP, Nigeria is now the 26th largest economy in the world. It will appear then that our aspiration to become one of the 20 largest economies in the world by 2020 is within reach. However, whenever the GDP figures are brandished by the government as signs of achievement, red flags start emerging as the people look around and wonder if GDP stands for Gari Don Peme. Because even staple foods are becoming unaffordable to the so-called ordinary Nigerian. In any case, we need not go into these socio-economic realities that challenge the bogus claims of economic growth. Let us simply dwell in the realm of economic statistics with which experts have often attempted to blind the eyes of Nigerians. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, as well as Trading Economics, a resource center for economic indicators for countries the world over, including Nigeria, there was a decline in average GDP growth rate between the third quarter of 2011 and the first quarter of 2014, with growth declining to an average rate of 4.5% within that period, compared to earlier rates as well as the 2014 rate of 6%. Were these not signs of staggering economy? Signs that were strongly denied by the government until recently, when the fact would no longer be hidden following the fall in oil prices. One also wonders if this decline was not a pointer to the fact that the economy could no longer sustain the massive corruption and the fuel subsidy regime, which then informed the attempted subsidy removal and the increase in fuel price in January 2012, a policy which the people protested, defying intimidation, until the protests were crushed by a combined force of political intrigues, economic sellouts, and military deployment, with no action taken against the major culprits in the subsidy fraud. Also, one wonders if, despite all the acclaimed benefits of the rebasing exercise, it was not mere recourse to plastic surgery as an attempted solution to an internal disease in a last-minute effort to window dress the economy and attract investment rather than address the problems fundamentally, considering the fact that it was done in the first quarter of 2014. The gap between the bogus GDP claims and the economic realities of Nigerians is seen in the fact that Nigeria, according to the World Bank, has one of the lowest GDP per capita based on purchasing power parity in the world, at the 123rd position out of 185 countries, thus revealing that the value of our currency as an import-dependent economy makes our GDP claims of little worth. Worse still, the level of inequality in the distribution of wealth that shows that a select few have cornered the wealth of the nation is seen in a Gini coefficient of 43.8, which is one of the highest inequality indicators in the world, according to World Bank statistics. To explain to Nigerians what this means, the leadership newspapers of March 1, 2014 revealed that in a population of about 170 million people, only about 12 Nigerians control 1/8 of the entire Nigerian economy. More damning revelations were unveiled in an article titled "Bitter Truths About the Economy the Jonathan Government Does Not Want Nigerians to Know," published by Premium Times on December 22, 2014. In it, inconsistencies in statistical indicators being brandished by the government were unveiled. The fact was revealed that in the first 5 years of civil rule, that is from 1999, oil prices were not as high as they were between 2009 and 2013. Yet, whereas in those first 5 years, we had fiscal surpluses. Now we have been having fiscal deficits despite the relatively more favorable oil prices between 2009 and 2013. It will also interest Nigerians to know that within the same period, when oil prices were high, all other oil-producing countries recorded surpluses and deployed those surpluses to long-term infrastructure projects, while Nigeria was recording deficits and borrowing to service the deficits. Again, despite the fact that only about 70% of the budget is implemented annually in Nigeria, we keep borrowing and accumulating debt supposedly to service the contrived deficit. Also, whereas growth has supposedly remained strong, we have never been as indebted as we are now since our exit from the Paris Club with a $3.5 billion external debt and a 2.2 trillion naira domestic debt, even though what the debt has been used to achieve remains to be seen. Considering the negative correlation between growth and public debt, does this not suggest a statistical window dressing of our claims of growth? Why do we store our excess earnings in foreign reserves that give us a paltry 3% interest while we accumulate debt at an average interest rate of 13 to 15%? Even worse is the fact that, according to Chatham House, oil theft averages $3 to $8 billion annually. Yet, this monumental loss of an industrial scale does not reflect negatively in our growth claims. Definitely, some voodoo economies are cooking our books. Furthermore, earlier in 2014, the then governor of Central Bank, Lamido Sanusi Lamido, alleged that about $20 billion was not remitted to the Federation account by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, a claim that was later dismissed. Was this allegation thoroughly investigated without bias? Considering the fact that this allegation was made in a year preceding general elections and just before a fiscal era where Nigerians are now being asked to tighten their belts, we are compelled to ask where recent huge campaign donations are coming from and for what purpose such humongous donations in clear violation of the law are made. It appears the PDP campaign slogan for the 2015 election is "to hell with the poor." In the midst of these provocations, a supposedly successful transformation agenda is being peddled as the basis of re-election for 4 more years. We have failed to admit that our economic growth is not so much the result of astute fiscal and monetary policy as it is of the global steering of the 4 winds of the earth. In our monoproduct economic structure, international political and military crisis, especially among oil-producing states, has been the cause of our claimed economic growth due to the resultant high oil prices brought about by a shortfall in the supply of the product. Exporting countries, OPEC, vying not to cut production, now that the prices are falling, with some of our erstwhile major importers abandoning our crude, and with the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, vying not to cut production output, even if the price falls to $20 per barrel, we are face to face with an economic crisis that an austerity budget based on uncertain income projections cannot address. These red flags of economic upheaval are being raised alongside an alarming security situation that has so far cast serious doubt on our military capability. Who would have thought that Nigerians will one day be displaced from their homes and will become refugees in countries like Chad and Niger? Who would have thought that entire communities in one geopolitical zone of the country will one day be under the control of terror groups, or that the time will come when hundreds of women and children will be carted away by terror groups on more than one occasion with no intervention by security forces? Who would have expected that Nigerian soldiers will one day be helpless against insurgents to the extent of abandoning inferior weapons and fleeing to neighboring Cameroon. Who would have thought that Nigeria will one day be classified alongside Iraq and Afghanistan on the list of terror-stricken nations? In the recent Global Terrorism Index, based on 2013 incidents, Nigeria ranked 4th among 162 countries with 303 reported attacks, 1,826 fatalities, and 457 injuries. Terrorism was said to have cost Nigeria $28.48 billion in the year 2013. Nigeria is surpassed only by Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iraq in this index. Given the dastardly activities of Boko Haram last year, the 2014 index will be even more damning for Nigeria. Welcome to Fair Havens, a transitional harbor. Acts 27, verses 7 and 8. Acts 27, verses 7 and 8. When we had sailed slowly many days and arrived with difficulty off Cnidus, the wind not permitting us to proceed, we sailed under the shelter of Crete of Salmon. Passing it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens near the city of Lasea. With great difficulty, the Alexandrian ship in which Paul traveled arrived at a place called Fair Havens, and in verse 8, we notice that there was contemplation to temporarily harbor the ship in that location, but the harbor was not suitable to winter in. In like manner, the journey of the ship of the Nigerian state has thus been difficult, and we have largely been drifting under the influence of the winds. It is clear that a great storm lies ahead as we are approaching elections without addressing the fundamental flaws in the polity. These flaws include, number one, the awkward geopolitical structure that has the form but lacks the substance of federalism. 2, the consequent lopsided economic structure in which a single product from one region of the country contributes the bulk of the revenue of the entire nation despite the abundant resources spread across the nation. Number 3, a constitution that lays claim to the phrase, "we the people," but to which the people made no input. Number 4, contentious population figures that have been the harbinger of election disputes since the pre-independence era. And number 5, an electoral body that wears the label independent but is practically under the control of the presidency. These factors have directly and indirectly contributed to the current economic crisis, political instability, and the security situation. We managed to trudge on in this condition, advancing with great difficulty until we got to our own Fair Havens. We arrived at our Fair Havens when, for the first time in the history of our nation, a person from the South, the region was hit by the fundamental flaws in our polity, became president. One would have expected that, being from the Niger Delta and an academic for that matter, President Jonathan will understand the role carved out for him, lay aside transient political ambitions, and champion the cause of restructuring while pursuing national integration, and then go down in history as Nigeria's greatest leader hitherto. But this is yet to be seen. However, President Goodluck Jonathan came close to living up to this when he convoked the 2014 National Conference, a gathering of nobles, elders, and the young from across the nation, in which these issues were critically examined and recommendations made. Fellow Nigerians, I speak expressly to you that the report of the 2014 National Conference is a Fair Havens in which Nigeria must winter to avoid the storms that are ahead. Just the way Paul on the Alexandrian ship perceived that the voyage will end in much loss and warned the centurion, helmsman, and ship owner, I warned the nation through a broadcast and press conference held at the Lateran Assembly on Sunday, July 22nd, 2012. I told the nation that I perceive that there will be no 2015 if we fail to fix 2014. Indeed, those perceptions were signals I was speaking.